age, everything we do is just about by computer. I called all of my guys into my office this week, and I'm going to a new computer software program that helps to manage some of the work that they do and this and that and the other. And I asked them, I said, do you want to be able to access this on your phone? And my intent was to think that they would not. I did not think that they would. I felt like they would say, nah, we'd rather just have, go look it up. Every one of them said, no, man, we'd love to be able to look at it on our phone. And I said, well, that sort of surprised me. But nonetheless, I mean, it's okay. That's the age in which we live in. I will never, ever forget, and this has been a number of years ago, 15 years ago or more, we had a computer that was in it was sort of a sitting area. We used it as an office in our house. And one Sunday afternoon, I had to preach that Sunday night, and I was studying, and I was on my computer, and I was making notes and doing all of that. And I was sitting there, and I typed in on a search bar, Hurricane Katrina is what I did. And that's just the two words. And what I was doing was going back to look at some of the statistics of how many people perished during Hurricane Katrina and all this and another. So I just typed in, I don't remember if it was Google or what, I have no idea. But nonetheless, I just typed in Hurricane Katrina. Hit search. That was not what I was searching for. And I panicked. I went, oh my God. And my wife said, what is it? I said, come here. I said, you got to see this. I said, I want you to see what I typed in, and I want you to see what came up. And I want you to know what's on the system. And so we talked about it, we seen it, and we was able to put in some safeguards. Number one, just an accountability measure. Number two was that I had a young daughter that I didn't want involved in or to accidentally get involved in those types of things. Let me tell you something. If I can get mine. These little devices right here can be some of the most destructive things that mankind has ever put their hands on. Why? Because you can find anything you want on these right here. There is no limit. There is no safeguards. There is nothing that you can't look up on these devices right here. Thousands and thousands and thousands of individuals have lost their jobs simply by using these devices right here in a measure and for a purpose that they should never have been able to do, much less have done. Should never have been able to do. But that is the society that we're living in. It is a disease. It is a spirit. It is something that is used to create the downfall of men and women. Ladies, I'm sorry. Don't sit here and think that you're excused from the conversation when we start talking about people that are viewing and entertaining and doing all of these things that is involved with pornographic or sexualistic acts throughout the world. I can't remember what the name of the thing was. There was I guess it was a web page, and I may be wrong on this. There was a website or a web page or something that men and women could go on and make connections to where they actually physically met. And I can't remember what the name of it was. But anyhow, long story short, it got hacked by some hackers. And they released the names of every individual that had signed up on that website or that web page. They released the names of them out to the public, And it caused thousands of people to be divorced. It caused thousands of people to lose their jobs. It did all of this thing simply because what people were doing in the dark came to light simply because of a hacker that broke into their webpage and released all this information, which was not funny. I almost said the funny thing about it. It was not funny. There was nothing funny about it at all. But there were some people that I worked with whenever I was at UMC, that their name was on that sheet. There was a lot of people that I was familiar with that their name came out on that list. Local people. This isn't just, and this was a national site or whatever. I mean, it was all across the land. But that's what society is doing to break up homes, to break up churches, to break up families, to do all those things. And we've got to understand, we've got to be careful. None of us are excused from the conversation when it comes to it. Don't say, well, that would never happen to me. Don't say that. Don't say that. One of the most powerful evangelists that I have ever known, I don't want to say, I shouldn't say that because I've known some awesome evangelists. One of the ones that ranked in the top, let me just put it that way. I'll say that. I had the utmost respect for. Thought that he was almost, next to Paul when it come to living for God. But you know what I didn't look at? The fact that he was human. Never considered the fact that he had to get up just like I did every day and had to fight off things. And his deal was he traveled all over the country. He stayed in hotel rooms every day or every night, and it was all over the country. And he fell into trouble. Lost his family. Of course, lost his ministry. The whole thing. So never say that it's above me, because it's not above any of us. It's not above any of us. So, we're going to move on. Matthew chapter number 5, verse number 27. Let me get to the page now. Matthew chapter number 5, verse 27 down through verse number 30. He said, ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not commit adultery. Now, that's, if you ask anybody, what's some of the sins that you should never do, that's one of the very first ones that everybody will jump up and say, thou shalt not commit adultery. Okay, well, yeah, absolutely. It's red letter. It's guaranteed. It's in stone. That is a true fact. However, it says, but I say to you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Now, I want you to pay attention to something. When it talks about that in his heart, and he said that looks upon her in this manner committeth adultery in his heart. The Bible said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth's going to speak. Those things are closely correlated together, so therefore it starts with the eyes, it enters into the heart, it exits through the mouth. See the circle there? See how those things happen? It begins with what we watch. Let me tell you something. You better be careful what you just in common fashion watch in your home. Televisions. Let me tell you, now, I'm not going down that road on television, but I will tell you something. And of course, computers are 100 times worse than televisions, but advertisements that they put on television. What is, I don't even know if I ought to ask this, but I'm going to because I thought about it. What is the number one feature of Sunday night football whenever it comes on? What does everybody look for? I'm not saying you look for it. I'm just saying what is it everybody talk about? Well, I'll say it because y'all scared. Carrie Underwood. Absolutely. Carrie Underwood. Now, I have respect for Carrie Underwood as far as a person. I think, as far as I know, she's a pretty good person. Has some morals type thing. But that's what I hear everybody saying. Man, that Carrie Underwood. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. Why? Because she's got shorts on up to here. And she could sing the ABCs and make it sound good. And all these things, but everybody, we're not talking about who's playing the football game. We're not worried about who's going to win at the end of the day. It's that Carrie Underwood's going to sing the opening song for Sunday Night Football. So that's the kind of things, and I'm not sitting here telling you there's anything wrong with watching Sunday Night Football. Yeah, that's not at all. That's not what I'm telling you. But that's the mentality that people get drawn into that causes us problems, that causes issues. I have never in my lifetime understood these, and they call them gentlemen's clubs. I've never been to one, never been in one, never, I could go down a road there, boy, that would lead just for miles. But it's crazy. It's crazy how people get drawn in. How do they do that? With their eyes. Watch what we see. If we watch what we see, we guard against what we see, then it automatically guards against what comes into our heart, and therefore we don't have to worry as much about what expels out through our mouth. So we have to be careful. Verse number 29, and if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out, cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that the whole body should be cast into hell. Jesus said, he said, it's better to be with one eye so that you don't see this garbage than it is for your whole body to be cast into hell. It is like a disease. You know what? One of the things that I've learned is that whenever, especially if I'm working on somebody, or if it's a car wreck or medical issues or whatever it might be, if I'm going to put my hands on them, you know what I'm going to have on? Gloves. You know why I'm going to have on gloves? Because I don't know what they got. Does that mean they have anything? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I work on people that I would feel 100%, no I wouldn't, I would feel 99.9% comfortable with putting my hands on them barehanded and wouldn't think twice about it. But it's that 0.1% that I know nothing about. And so therefore I just do it all the same. I make sure when I get out of my truck, Chris, what's the first thing we're going to have on? I'm going to have on some gloves. Absolutely. Because I want to protect myself against those things that might be there, that might possibly show up later. So therefore, you have to watch what you do. You have to be careful with those things. He went on to say in verse number 30, he said, and if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off. Cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. Every one of these things, all of these sexual sins, begins by sight and erodes into the heart. Into the heart. We have to guard against our heart. Now, and I'm going to say this. I've seen people that have been trapped in these things, and our first carnal thought is, well, they shouldn't have been doing it, and they shouldn't have done this, and they shouldn't have done that, and we want to point fingers, and we want to. Let me tell you something. You're not going to go to hell any faster for that than we are for lying or cheating or any of these other thousands of things that we can come up with. So who am I to say? The reason why so many people battle this sin in darkness, the reason why they battle it by themselves, the reason why they try, they fight against it, they do all of those things to try to overcome it, and it being their everyday struggle. The reason why they do that is because of the perception of even the church. Hello? It's quiet. Of even the church. Because we don't like to address those kind of things. We don't like to look at those things as an individual that has just fallen into sin. Oh, they're on all those websites, and they're doing this, and they're being unfaithful, okay, yeah, maybe. But who am I to put a stigma of elevation of how great a sin this is versus anything else that I've ever done? How can I say that? So what I'm saying is that we have got to get to the place that when an individual is dealing with something like this, and I'll be honest with you, I've told people before, you know, I personally have never dealt with drugs. I've never fooled with a single drug in my entire life. But I have talked to those that are addicted to drugs. I've talked to those that are dominated by drugs and that are controlled by drugs and all those things. And I've asked them, I said, how does it happen? They said, we just tried it one time and it could never get away from it again. Could never do it. So we have got to get to the place to where the drug addict, now, you know, when the drug addict comes in and says, man, I was addicted to drugs and I've been using drugs for half my life, but God has set me free, and everybody, you know, shouting and screaming and talking about how good God is. But you let the prostitute, or you let the porn addict or the porn star or any of those types of people come in, and what's the first thing we do? I'm not talking about us as a church. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the church. The church. And we can't do that. Because we've got to get to the place that people can say, hey, I got a problem. And I need help. I need help. We need to be able to go to one another, if nothing else in private, and just say, hey, I want to be accountable to you. We need accountability. We need people that will help us say, whenever those times come and whenever those things, because again, I've never been controlled by drugs. I don't know what it's like. I don't know what you deal with. I don't know what they feel. I don't know any of those things. But we need to be able to say whenever they come and say, man, I just can't fight this thing. I can't fight this feeling. I can't fight this desire. I can't fight this want. I can't do that. To say, it's okay. Let's do this together. Let's be accountable. Let's fight together. But we've got to be able to get to that place. And I dare say, across the nation, we are not there today. We are not there because of the stigmas that are placed. It all is one and the same. It begins through our eyes, but it erodes away our heart. And that's what affects us. You know, one thing I can't tell you from Genesis to Revelation a single time where Jesus pointed out a sin and said, because your sin is so much more than this one over here, you know, you're going to have to wait a little while. I've never seen that. I've never seen where Jesus called out the differentials of sin. I've never seen that. Jesus said, because of your sin, I go and I die that you might have salvation. Why? How can I have salvation? Because it's a free gift. It's offered. It's paid for. For even the porn stars and the pornography addicts and the prostitutes and all the sexual sins of the world, you mean even for them? Absolutely. Yeah, he died for them too. He sure did. 1 John chapter number 2. Give me a second. I got one in here somewhere. I was about to think John jumped out of the book and left. 1 John chapter number 2 and verse number 15. He said, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. Now, you know, whether we want to admit it or not, there's not well, there may be some, because there's some very young ones, but there's not many, even in this congregation, that we have not lusted after something. Now, when I use that word, L-U-S-T-E-D, it automatically, in our minds, we think sexualistic. That's not necessarily true. What does it mean? Want, can't do without, gotta have, kind of thing. Have we ever just seen something out there that we just wanted so bad? I have. There's no doubt in my mind. Chris, I remember when I bought a 1981 Z28 Camaro. And I thought, man, that's the sharpest car that's ever been created. I just thought I couldn't make it without it. And I went to saving up my money to try to buy this thing, and I did. And that was the worst mistake. Not the worst mistake, but it was one of them that I ever made. That joker cost me more money from tearing it up than I ever dreamed of. But I lusted after it. I wanted it so bad. And it was just something that I felt like I couldn't live without, and I had to have it. And then when I got it, yeah. You know, lust is very relative to a dog chasing a car. You know, ever seen a dog chase a car? You know what? And I told somebody this the other day. I said, you know, it's all fun and games until he catches it. It may be fun to chase that car, but if he ever catches up with that dude, it is going to be trouble. You ever seen one catch up with one? Most of them are left laying in the highway. Ain't near as much fun as it seems to be. It's very relative. And so there's things out there. And I'll be honest, I catch myself even today. You know, man, I'll get the Bass Pro magazine or the flyer that comes in through the mail, and I'll get that joker out, and I'll see a new gun that they got in there. I don't need that thing no more than I need a hole in my head. But I sit there and I'll think about it. I say, boy, I'd like to have that joker. I mean, it don't matter. It's $2,000, you know, but, you know, I can save up my money and I could get it. For what? And that's exactly the way my wife would say it. For what? Why do you need another gun? And the terrible part about that is that I don't have a good answer. Normally, I can come up with a pretty good answer on most stuff, but I can't come up with a good answer on that. But I just want it. I just want it. He said, I'm fixing to go here, and it ain't popular, but he said, the lust of the eyes and the pride of life. You saying I'm prideful, Brother Donnie? No, I did not say that. I did not say that. But I'd be a bald-faced liar if I stood before you and said, I've never been prideful. Because I have. I know I have. You know, when I was a kid, we didn't have squat. Period. I mean, an automobile for us was 4 tires that would make it more than a mile. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I can remember being 15 years old, Sister Dorleen, and I thought I was going to start dating and being able to go out and do all these things. And my mom and dad had a blue Buick LeSabre that my little brother had knocked the back glass out of, and they never put a new back glass in it. And I would drive that joker to where everybody was, and I'd park down the road a ways, and then I'd walk because I was so embarrassed of that ragged old blue Buick LeSabre car. Didn't want to be seen in it. Embarrassed. But then when I became an adult and I started working and I started getting stuff and I was able to pay for things and I was able to buy nicer things, and I kept on, and I bought that I was trying to think if I was in it today. I bought that black Ram pickup truck that I got. That's only the second new vehicle that I personally have ever bought for me. Now, we buy Carol new ones, but for me in my lifetime. I bought an old dually one time that I couldn't afford, and I had to sell it. So that was one of my kids' moves. And so I've always said that's really the first new truck that I've ever owned. And I bought it, and I fixed it up, and I put all the stuff on it, and I put big tires on it, and I did all the things, you know. And everybody said, man, that truck looks good. It looks good. And you know what I got to noticing? I was more proud of that truck than I was a lot of other things that I ought to have been proud of. And so for that reason, a lot of times you'll see an old white 1997 Ford F-350 crew cab with a steel bed on the back parked out in the church parking lot. You want to know why? Because I'm not above driving something like that anymore, because my pride don't mean anything. My pride is not as important as it used to be. I wouldn't have been caught dead in that. I call it the Humpty. That's what we call it around the house. Carol said, why are you driving that truck? I said, I just am. And I'll be truthful in telling you, I like driving it too. It ain't that I just drive it for a purpose. I like driving it. It's a 1997, got 200,000 miles on it. It's got some green spots on it, I'm sure still, and but I like it. He said the lust of the flesh and the pride of life. Let us never. That's the reason why people who are trapped in sexual sins, it's something, you got to break the pride just to say, I need help. And know and be able to feel that I'm not being judged. I'm not being, crucified by those that are supposed to help me. I'm not being tormented by the very ones that have the ability to help me and to support me. James chapter number 3. In James chapter number 3, verses 13. Help if I get there. He said, "Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness and wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, and devilish." Don't think, so many people, a lot of times they feel like that if I'm dealing with feelings, if I'm dealing with desires, if I'm dealing with wants, if I'm doing any of those things, that automatically I'm not where I need to be. Or I'm not doing what I need to do. And maybe you're not. Who am I to say? Maybe you're not. You know that. But what I'm saying is, just because we deal with those circumstances or those effects does not mean that God is disappointed, that God is against me, that God is not working on my behalf or in my favor. None of those. That's not. And the problem is that because here's the fact of it is that Jesus himself was given a choice or an opportunity one time after starving for 40 days, after being hungry as he could be, given an opportunity to turn the stones into bread and to have eaten them and to have fulfilled his desire. After having filled his wants, having to fulfill his feelings. Come on. I'm going to tell you something. If I go without food 12 hours, I'm talking about 12 days or 30 days or 40 days. If I go with food without 12 hours, I got desire, I got want, and I got feelings. I desire something to eat, I want something to eat, and my stomach, it feels like it is about gnawing on my backbone. So I've got all of those things going on in there whenever that happens. It does not mean that I have failed God because of dealing with those things that are going on in there. What it does mean is, in Jesus' case, Jesus spoke up and said, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God." Now, if Jesus had said, "Oh yeah, let me turn this rock into bread and let me," then what would have been? He would have submitted himself to the desires of the devil, right? Hey, I'm not making this up. Read it in the book. If he had done that, then he would have submitted himself to the feeling, he would have submitted himself to the desire, and he would have submitted himself to the want. But he didn't. He didn't. And so therefore, the Bible continues to tell us that he is spotless, he is blameless, and he is without sin. But he had those same feelings and wants and desires. What are you saying, Brother Donnie? Just because you are approached with those things. Hey, let me tell you, I had a pastor one time. He told me, he said, if you're in the Walmart and you see this lady that walks by and she's got on something that probably resembles the amount of cotton that you would find in a Bayer aspirin bottle, and you don't look, he said, boys, there's probably something wrong with you. And I thought, oh no. He said, if you follow her around and you look again, he said, there's something wrong with your heart. And I went, ooh. Makes a difference. Makes a difference. He said, if she don't get your attention, there's probably some work you need to do. He said, but if you delve off in to just following, and how did it happen? How did it begin? It begins with the eyes. Let me tell you what, we can stop it right there. We can stop it right there. We have to know what we're doing. We have to be careful. Have any of you ever rode down 220 over in Jackson? I was riding down 220 one day, and I don't go, I probably ain't been 220 5 times in my lifetime. But I was riding down 220 one day a few years ago, and I'm riding along there, just Cadillacing along, and I look up, and here is a billboard of, I don't know what it was, one of the gentlemen's clubs. I don't know which one it was. And it may still be there. I don't know. I couldn't believe it. I looked. I went, holy smoke. On a billboard on the side of the interstate and no, they didn't pick the ugliest one that worked for the farm to put up there on the billboard. They sure didn't. And she wasn't dressed in a wool jacket and long slacks either. They did that to do exactly what I did, was to go, golly. I didn't turn around and go back and see what the sign said, Chris. I didn't go back to see what it said, but I knew immediately. I couldn't believe that they was advertising that publicly like that, but they did. And it was for that very purpose. So we have to be careful. Not just what our eyes see, but what we do with it when we see it. He said, the lust of the flesh and the pride of life are not of God. So we've got to be careful. We've got to watch against those things. Man, there's so much more. One of the things, and I do want to do this real quick, I know. Let me see if I can just read it off of here instead of having to look it up again. Job chapter 31, verse number 1. He said, I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I think upon a maid? For what portion of God is there from above, and what inheritance of the Almighty from on high? Doth not he see my ways and count all my steps? I have walked with vanity, or if my foot hath hasted to deceit, let me be weighed in an even balance, that God may know mine integrity. Let me be weighed, that God knows my heart. And what I don't like to see, and I hear people, I have people shoot me texts and stuff all the time, say, man, I'm struggling, I need help, I need this, pray for me, or those kind of things, because they're dealing with circumstances or issues or whatever. And I never do this, I never ask, but I always want, and I wonder in my mind, are you just being chased? Are you just being pursued by the devil? Is that what it is? Or are you indulged in the devil? Because let me tell you something. I'm being pursued all the time. On every corner, I'm being pursued. But I've always looked at it that if he's after me, then he don't have me. If he's chasing me, then he don't have me. If he's setting up roadblocks and detours and booby traps and all these things to try to snare me, hey, I'm still on the winning side. But we can't let those kinds of things drag us down, belittle us, make us feel dirty, make us feel sinful, if he's just pursuing me. The world is pursuing me unless you live in a bubble. Now, y'all may have a bubble that y'all live in. I don't know. I don't have one. I don't have a bubble to live in. Be nice sometimes. You know, I really think sometimes it'd be nice just live in a bubble. Don't have to worry about nothing. Don't have to worry about nothing coming in, nothing getting out. Everything's fine. That's a fairy tale. But as long as he's pursuing you, he don't have you. And the Bible said that God knows the integrity of my heart. What is integrity? It's the strength. It's the ability. It's the want to. It's the desire to live for God. You know, there's sometimes I sit down and I say, God, I want to live for you, but I swear I don't know how sometimes. You ever feel like that? I don't know how to get above this. I don't know how to get through it. I don't know what to do next. Everything I do, I feel like it's either not enough or it's not right or it's not this. We get there sometimes. But he said he knew the integrity of my heart. Now, I can say, yeah, I want to live for God, but I promise you, if I spend 7 days a week at Joe's Bar and Grill down there, I can say I want to live for God all I want to, and that is a lie. Because if we say and if we do works together, that's one thing. But if I say one thing and I do another, that's another thing. We can't do that. God knows the integrity of your heart. Just guard it. Just know you have somebody fighting for you on your side. Let's go before the Lord in prayer. God, we love you so much. God, so thankful today for your word. So thankful, God, for an opportunity, Lord, to look at what you say about us. And God, I pray today, Lord, open up the windows of heaven upon them. God, for those that are struggling, Lord, let them find comfort in those that they can abide in, that they can confide in, and Lord, and can trust, Lord, and be accountable to, and do those things, God, that are necessary to find ourselves at an altar, at a place, oh God, that you can cleanse and deliver, Lord. But God, the first step is to get there. And God, so many people are blocked from getting there just by the stigma of even the church and the world combined, God. But Lord, I pray today, Lord Jesus, Lord, open it up, Lord. Your altars are open today, God, for those that are looking for a refuge, that are looking for a place to confide in. And God, I know you said under the wings of the shadows of the Almighty, God, that I can rest, that I can find security and peace. And let it happen today for those that are searching. God, we give you praise, honor, and glory in Jesus' name.